People who work in surveillance, what's the most unexplained or creepy thing you've seen on video? LPO here. I see crazy shit all the time. One of the creepiest things I have seen was a string of toys moving on its own down an aisle. It was like a duck with smaller ducks. Of course, I had to investigate. When I zoomed in, I was surprised to see that they were real ducks. Deleted. I used to work overnights at a hotel, and would monitor the security cameras. They would detect motion and a little indicator would blink when motion was well, detected. Anyway, it always gave me the creeps when I'd hear the elevator ding. I'd run out to the lobby to grate the guest to make sure they didn't need something or whatever, and nobody would get off the elevator. I'd watch the tapes and see the motion indicator blinking on a floor, then see the elevator open on that floor, then see the elevator open on the ground floor and the motion indicator blink on the camera down the hall. Gave me the heebie-jeebies. Also, one time I was in my office in the middle of the night and it sounded like someone banged on the door with the side of their fist. Just one single slam. You can see me reacting to it on the video. My head whipped to face the door where the sound came from, then immediately whipped around to stare at the camera to see who the fuck was outside my door. There was nobody there, and none of the motion sensors had picked up anything. Not fun finishing the rest of that shift. I edited together the footage from the security cameras outside Pulse before, during and after the shooting. Though there were many sad and or disturbing things to be seen, the strange one was a wounded man that appeared out of nowhere. He waved his hands for help and cops came over and carried him to safety. I tried numerous times to rewind to find out where he came from, but he was just there or he wasn't. He didn't crawl to where he had gotten, he just appeared. He looked like he made it out okay. I worked in a maximum security prison for a while. I was assigned to Central Control one night, which is where the camera screens were. One of the cameras was for the classifications room. I glanced at it and there was an inmate in there. This was super odd because it was 2 in the morning and nobody was supposed to be in there. Everyone that had keys to that room went home at 5. Anyways, so this inmate is just sitting in there doing nothing. I got the sergeant's attention and told him someone was in there, and gave him the spare key to the room. He went to go check it out with a couple of other people, but by the time they got there, the room was empty. They searched for like 15 minutes but there was definitely no one in there. I don't work in surveillance, but have a home security system. I left for work one morning, walked out my back door, got in my car, and pulled out of my driveway. The moment I left the driveway, a homeless would-be burglar came out from hiding on the side of my house and tried to open my back door. When he found it locked, he reluctantly wandered off after looking around a bit. Never would have known if it wasn't for cameras. Makes you wonder what goes on without your knowledge. Edit. Since this post has gotten so much attention, I'd like to take a moment to advocate for home security systems. Please consider purchasing one. The ability to see what goes on around your home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is absolutely priceless. My camera system aids in the investigation of at least 3 petty crimes in my neighborhood per year. Hit. About a year ago, I had cameras installed around my house, initially to catch male thieves. One morning after noticing my back gate ajar, I reviewed the footage from the night before. I watched as a would-be burglar at 3 a.m. pry open the gate and creep towards the living room. He suddenly stopped and started backing away when he noticed I was home and awake. I was actually just a few feet away in the living room with the blackout curtains closed. He must have spotted light peeking out at the bottom of the curtains. The motion-activated lights kicked on as he simultaneously ran out the back gate and into the woods behind our yard. I was awake transitioning to a mid-shift, and ironically had a table full of guns as I disassembled them for cleaning after a day at the range. It's probably good that I didn't see him or hear him that night. We both would have freaked out. Link to pics. http://imager.com/a/2uvkt. Used to see little crescent-shaped light orbs floating around the back dock of a nursing home that I did a little security for when I was young. First time I saw it I thought it was a reflection of a flashlight and that somebody was screwing around behind the building. I jumped up and ran to the door only to find that it was pitch dark and no movement of any kind going on. Only explanation I was ever able to come up with is it had something to do with the electrical panel energizing when the AC units would kick on. Don't know for sure, but it made me feel a little better. Also around that time the nurses found a cat that had been deboned, sprawled out on the sidewalk in front of the healthcare entrance. Paws and skull were the only hard bits left. I'll share this one again, I've posted this before, and it's been a while, so see how my memory goes. I used to work at a place which required to be manned 24 hours a day. Reason being is that I handled sensitive documents/files, and if somebody needed this information in the middle of the night I would have to fetch it for them, or confirm that I have it. Anyways, security is kind of tight. Bars on windows, multiple locked doors to get to where I am. They would give me work to do during the night, but underestimated how quickly I could get it done. So like most nights, I finished my work in like 30 to 45 minutes and pulled out my phone and played games, Netflix, browse Reddit, since nobody else is in the building at night. So now it is getting to be the last third of my shift when all of the sudden I hear a door close. I look to the security camera and see someone walking down a hall towards my room. At first I thought it was just somebody that came in, ridiculously, early, so I turn around and wait for them to come in. But nobody came in, and the hairs start rising on my back. Now, this isn't a really big building, so I figure I'll find the guy wherever he is and start checking offices and storage rooms, but come up empty-handed. However, I do see that a fire door had shut. I go to try and rewind the camera, but the digital recording is password protected and I don't know the password. Anyways, the whole thing freaked me out. The way the person was walking down the hallway, like a determined walk right to where I was. So, I sit with my spine tingling for the last couple hours of my shift, and finally people start coming in. My replacement shows up and I tell her what I saw, and at this point I figured I must have imagined the whole thing. I'm told to go home and the manager and girl who replaced me would look over the camera. After getting home I call my manager and ask what was on the camera. So they said that the video showed the fire door closing, but then the video froze for about an hour. The next thing it records is me reopening the door. This happened a few years before I started working at my current job. The elevators in my building go down to the first and second basement. Late one night, one of our security guards spots a group of people heading into the elevator at level 4. He thinks it's curious because nobody is supposed to be in the building after midnight, so he keeps a close watch on all the lobby cameras to see which floor the group are lights at. The doors open at basement 2. But nobody comes out. The second guard scurries down to the elevator doors while the first guard keeps his eye on the cameras to make sure no one has left. When the second guard gets to the basement elevator, he looks puzzled and searches around. He comes back to the guard station to confirm that it's empty. Putting the building on lockdown, the two guards spend the rest of the night combing the building together, but they were unable to find anyone or anything. They decide to call the police, who review the footage and see the same thing. In the end, the sighting was still unexplained, but my workplace decided to stop being cheap and install security cameras in the elevators too. Deleted. Had a game camera out once and I had a neighbor who would just walk through my property. I didn't care, the place is pretty and there's no back fence, but I kept having sheep go missing, so I set out a camera. The camera caught my neighbor walking by. Then like 30 seconds later a mountain lion walked by it stalking him. It apparently never attacked as he was fine, but he had no idea how close he was to that thing. Deleted. I have cameras on my front and back doors that send video to my phone when they detect movement. I was out of town and woke up to seeing several police officers walking around in my front and backyard. I called my neighbor to find out what had happened and found out that someone had crashed their car through my back fence, which borders the highway. I have a home security system with a camera that watches in the living room. I saw my cat and my dog both sitting together in the dog's bed. The cat fucking hates the dog. I think she was possessed. Not particularly creepy, but I used to work as a security officer and was in charge of surveillance/dispatch at a theme park. I was once casually watching a camera that was mounted in one of the ride's management office and I saw someone shitting in the desk side trash can. I used to have an apartment pretty close to my office. The office building was kind of in a business district, but it was also kind of off on its own relative to the city's commercial district footprint. I sold the apartment and before moving into my new home, I left my bicycle chained to the building's bike rack. It was only going to be there for a few days in that no man's land before I was able to move into the new place. Anyway, one day in the middle of the week, I come into the office, walk past the bike rack and notice that it's completely empty. The building has a bunch of security cameras and one more or less is facing the bike rack since it's adjacent to the front entryway. I sit and watch the security tape with the IT guy. We're watching, see everyone leave the office the night before, see the bike, keep watching, then all of a sudden poof, bike gone. We slowed the tape down and it seemed like when you're watching digital cable or satellite and the image gets garbled. Literally it was bike there, then poof gone. In the tape's timestamp it literally happened in 1 second. I assume my bike got taken to the upside down. I used to work part-time doing surveillance work for an art gallery. I went in horribly sick one day because I worked on a contract and had to meet a quota for so many hours. Otherwise I'd have to make it up elsewhere, which was borderline impossible for me because I only had free time on weekends, when they were closed. So, here I am with a fever and a trash can, dripping sweat and staring at these screens when, all of a sudden, on the lower gallery, I see this black, oozing mass creeping across the floor. It just kinda slithered across the brick, up the wall, pooled into a perfect circle in the middle of the room. Then, it stood up into this weird, elongated shadow person with spindly arms and no eyes, looked up at the camera, then very rapidly melted back into the floor and bolted toward the hallway that led to my desk. I screamed bloody murder. Then, I threw up. Also, no, that thing wasn't really there. I was just way sicker than I thought, it was a fever hallucination. My boss came in and sent me home shortly after she came to see if I had died, and I actually still use that weird, gangly thing my brain came up with as a motif in some of my art. Ha ha. I used to work security at a college dorm and I once witnessed one of the doors on a washing machine slowly open itself and proceed to tear itself clean off of the machine. I told my boss this creepy story and showed him the video and he made me review camera footage for the rest of the night to find out who broke the machine despite the fact that he watched it break itself. Didn't have a job in security, but when I worked at Sears in high school there was a theft in my department and the LP team pulled us into their surveillance room to interview us. While they were asking me questions, I kept being distracted by all the monitors. Right above the guy asking me questions, I saw a small TV that had 16 smaller screens and realized the cameras were in the dressing rooms. I didn't see anyone in there at the time and the guy interviewing me saw me looking. He turned to the console and turned that monitor off real quick. Super creepy if you ask me. TLDR Sears has cameras in their dressing rooms. I was house sitting in a huge house and set up a canary camera near my bedroom. I had an uneasy feeling someone else was in the house with me, so I set up the camera just to make sure no one came near my room. In the middle of the night someone approached it from behind and turned it so it faced a blank wall. Then a few minutes later turned it back the way it was before. It tripped the canary and I got a notification on my phone. I saw it and searched the house thoroughly the next morning and never found anything. Needless to say, I slept with my door locked the rest of my time there. I worked in a government-run psychiatric hospital. More specifically, a forensic psych hospital. That means the loony bin for people who committed, sometimes serious, crimes and are being evaluated for sanity or are in rehab after a successful insanity plea. They don't just walk free with a successful insanity plea, they go to an asylum. Although I did direct patient care, I sometimes picked up shifts to work nights and man the control center, which contained live feed of all the security cameras, opened locked doors, etc. For our highest risk patients, there were cameras in every room. A couple things I saw. Patients having very animated/emotional conversations with unseen others, that's what we were trained to call them, in the middle of the night in the dark. I don't believe in ghosts and I know it was just schizophrenia, but it was still kinda spooky. A guy who was in full bed restraints after assaulting another patient had flailed so violently that he flipped the bed over on himself. It was a heavy plastic bed that wasn't bolted to the floor so we could adjust/position it. That one sucked because some of the restraints came loose and my co-workers still had to flip the bed over and re-restrain him. He got a nice shot of haloperidol/Ativan after that. Guy painting pictures with his own feces. We didn't stop them. Everything could be clean so we just let him finish and then we put on special suits for restraining him and forcibly cleaning him. Guy laying down in his room on the floor, flips his legs over his head and starts peeing into his own mouth. Suicide attempt via smacking their head against a concrete wall. Those suck to watch. A brutal way to try and off yourself. I worked there about a year. Fun job, but I would never do it again. I'm a personal banker now, but at the time this story took place I was an administrative assistant for a banking executive. The office I worked at was our regional headquarters, so there were a lot of different departments around. One such department was manned by a friend of mine who I would often take breaks with. One day, I went into the basement and towards his cubicle where he was reviewing robbery footage of a local branch. This was around Halloween and these crooks had watched way too much TV before coming up with a plan. If you know anything about bank robberies, there's hardly ever a takeover situation. They barge into the branch wearing Scream Halloween masks and capes. A customer stood up from the chair he was sitting in and got pistol whipped by one robber while the other robber hopped the teller counter and pointed his gun at the teller. This poor teller was only on his second day and still training. He tried to open the drawer and it was locked. He didn't have the keys. He got pistol whipped too and fell to the ground. I don't remember exactly how much they got away with, but it wasn't much. Something about watching all of that take place in silence and in black and white on my friend's computer really creeped me out. They were caught a few hours later. They parked the getaway car right in front of their apartment and were counting money with the curtains open. Idiots. Obligatory, not a surveillance worker, but I used to manage a retail swimming pool store and we had a nice koi pond in the side yard. I chiefly cared for it, feeding the fish and cleaning out the leaves/filter, etc. So I named all the fish and grew to care about them. Then one day I was walking through the side yard to get to the back office when I noticed there were no fish in the pond. It's not a big pond, maybe a foot or two at its deepest and 7 long. It's not like they were all hiding. I at first thought someone hopped the fence at night and stole the fish. Koi are expensive after all. So I reviewed the security footage from the night before to try and catch the cretin who did this. And at 6 AM I caught him. A giant heron with a 6 wingspan came down and helped himself to some lox for breakfast. Man, I felt sad. Luckily one of the fish survived. He later came out of some hiding hole in the wall. He was named Subway because he was about a foot long. We bought more fish to keep him company and I made a rock cove covering over half the pond so they could flee in case the damn heron came back. We recorded thousands of miles of high-resolution video for a test drive we were doing. Saw some shit on the night drives. Most were probably animals. However, there was one that was a black mass about 7 feet tall just kind of hovering on the side of a road. The cars were stopped on the side of the road to check something. All of a sudden the thing darted across the road towards one of the cars but disappeared before it reached it. A man absolutely destroying his meat in the middle of an empty parking lot. Not my story and unfortunately I can't find a source for the video, but if I do I'll edit it in. An elderly woman in the UK had repeated break-ins, all with the same modus operandi, a smashed French door. So she installed a security system equipped to see in the night. She comes in, the French door is smashed once more, and she calls the police out. They check the house, find a few things missing and leave. She goes to bed and turns off all the lights. 5 minutes later, he emerges with the fire poker in hand. He's been there the entire time, sat for hours in a small cupboard brandishing this weapon. Fortunately she hadn't stumbled upon him. Turns out she'd fostered him previously. Edit 1, found the video. YouTube B/79 Evekml FK 2940 to 3200. Late to the party, but I used to be an on-site security guard on third shift. I was walking a site, an old Catholic school. Anyways, there was an old statue of the Virgin Mary out behind the school with a spotlight. Someone thought it would be funny to make it look like it was crying blood. It was red paint. There was another instance where I was patrolling one of the classroom buildings and all of a sudden I heard people laughing upstairs. I walked up the stairs and I started hearing furniture moving, but every single light was off and all the doors were locked. I noped the fuck out of there and never went in that building after my first walkthrough for the night. It was incredibly creepy, especially when you heard the heat kick on. Every pipe in that place would start knocking. Very grateful for my 9 to 5 in a cubicle now. Deleted. I work in the office of 2 people who were murdered at work. My desk is actually from one of the victims. I have a CCTV surveillance monitor that sits on my desk and shows me the front door entrance so I can see whenever someone approaches. Door stays locked for security. I am the only person in this office. I don't believe in ghosts, but every day my eyes play tricks on me and I feel like I see someone on the screen coming and going. It's in my peripheral vision. This happens probably 3 or 4 times a day, every day. I hope it's not ghosts. I can't imagine being stuck at work for all of eternity. I work for a CCTV installer, seen multiple deaths and seen a bus driver sexually abuse a child on a hidden cam. Twice. Not a good time. Edit, never actually expected this to get attention. A few more cases I've seen over the years. Cashier killed by ex in the supermarket with a scissor. Stabbed in the neck, it was bloody. Guy who would always pee in the elevator. He caused major damage to the entire system. I still got this footage somewhere. I could probably release it. Smile. Rich man who wanted to know if his wife was cheating on him. Turned out his wife banged the man who took care of the garden. It was very graphical. Had to install a camera on a parking lot of a hospital where black gay men would often had sex. Footage later shown there was a 5-man orgy a few times. In short, many orgies. A random guy ran in a customer his store and randomly stabbed him in his heart with a knife. Videos are full HD and you can see the blood squirting out his chest. He miraculously survived. Work as a doctor in a hospital in the UK, was on a night shift that was particularly quiet and some of the nurses were sitting around telling this story. A young doctor was running to a crash call. Our hospital is a giant L shape, with the front entrance being at the bend. A woman stopped him and asked him which way the exit was. He directed her and kept running. When he got to the patient, it was the woman who asked him for directions. She died. Apparently it got caught on the CCTV, that doctor stopped mid-running down the hallway, and gestured toward the exit while saying something to no one in particular. Edit, one of the nurses claimed to have seen it as she was dating a security guard. Sheesh guys, relax. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, leave a comment to suggest what video we should do next. Please check some of our other videos out.